Hey, I thought I would make this video because I haven't really seen any videos out there about a teenager leaving the church, so there's adults talking about it. But I decided I would do this since my family kind of said it as a joke, but I was like, that's kind of a good idea. So I have my guideline thing here I just wrote. I don't really know. I'm sorry, this video is probably gonna be a mess. But I will start with a backstory. So I was born into the LDS Mormon church, whatever you want to call it. And so when I was 5 years old or 6, about either of those, my dad decided to leave the church. So, of course, my mom and my siblings took that very hard. I remember crying, but only because everyone else was crying. I didn't really understand what was actually happening. And then, I got baptized when I was 8 by my bishop because my dad couldn't. So one of the only things I remember that happened while I was being baptized was I went to the bathroom with my mom to change out of the white suit that they give you, and I just remember crying these happy tears, but I knew that they were fake because I kind of forced myself to, because I knew as a kid that getting baptized was going to be this entire spiritual experience. It was going to be so amazing. So many other people feel like wow about it, and I was just like, oh yeah, so I'm gonna feel this way too, so I'm gonna cry. And I remember telling my mom oh yeah, I'm crying these happy tears, but I really knew that they weren't real. I really didn't feel the need to cry. And then you know how there's the session, it's either before or after you get baptized, where these other people who talk about their experience getting baptized or just their faith in general. I remember this probably 17-year-old girl talking about how she thought that conference was the perfect time to, let's say, color, is what she said, in a coloring book. But then she realized that the whole purpose of conference was to listen and to ponder what the prophets were actually saying. But as a child, I wanted to do something. An 8-year-old's attention span is literally 25 minutes. Look it up on your own time if you don't believe me, I'm serious. I, at 8 years old and older, felt bad for literally doing art while listening to conference. I mean, come on. It's hard for any person, any child, even if you're an adult, it can be hard to sit there for so many hours, 3 different sessions on Saturday and 2 on Sunday. So in about 2017 or 2018, my family and I moved across the USA, basically to a different state. I'm not saying the state's names for personal safety reasons, and so we lived in that house for 7 months. It was a rent, and I honestly have no memory of that church. I was in 3rd grade, and I have no memory, so I can't really talk about that. I'm sure nothing happened. And then we moved here, which is 1 state away from the previous state, and we have lived here for 4 to 5 years. I'm not exactly sure. Pretty sure we moved here to live here in 2019? 2018? Not really sure. Anyways, so yeah, we have lived here, and now I'm going to tell you about the experiences that I've had with this church now that the backstory is over. So the first thing that kind of began me not kind of liking the church is when you get faith in God when you're 8 years old and you're supposed to finish it by 11 for some sort of reward. I think it's a necklace or something. That's probably for the young ones. I'm not exactly sure. But anyways, that really stressed me out because I didn't really do anything until I was 10 and 11. So I basically had a year which this was technically my fault, but I was a child. I mean, I had other things to worry about, like chores and school. And so I was super stressed out about completing all of those activities. But then the last thing that I had to do was memorize all 13 articles of faith. And that really stressed me out. I would literally cry and man, it was really hard because memorizing 13 really long things is super hard, and I felt like that if I didn't complete the faith in God, that I wasn't qualified enough for this church. And I would see all the other girls who had already memorized all of their articles of faith, and they would do it by singing the songs that the articles of faith were made into. And I didn't know any of that. It was like I felt left out. I didn't feel good enough. I felt guilt, as many people do in church, this specific church. And one last thing that I wanted to add in is that even my mom was very concerned about how stressed I was. So that just goes to show how much stress as a child I was put under. And one specific experience I remember about this was if you could recite an entire articles of faith, this was at activity days, then you could get a Rice Krispie treat bar. If you don't know what activity days are, it's basically every Wednesday from 7 to 8 p.m. You and a group of people in the same class as you go and do some sort of activity and learn about a lesson while also doing a fun activity. I thought those were really fun. I love those, and I did make a few friends. But back to the Rice Krispie treat experience. So basically, I was like, oh, I memorized the first article of faith, which was the only one I knew. I think I knew like maybe 2 or 3, 1, 2, and 3 articles of faith out of the 13 that there were. And so I was like, okay, I can recite the first one. And so I did. And then the lady was like, no, you got this singular word wrong. I'm not going to give one to you. And I know that's not really a significant experience, but I just think it's kind of funny. And then also another thing that I struggled with and I was stressed about was I never really took interest. I never took the time to really read the Bible at all. So I tried reading it one day and I was like, oh, this actually isn't that hard to read, but I thought it was so boring and I almost never did it. And so I felt like I wasn't good enough. I felt guilty for that. And so one day I was on the phone with my grandma talking to her about how I was struggling with that. And her response was basically, just force yourself and you will like it. Just for clarification, yes, she literally did use the words, force yourself. Yeah. I can't force myself to do something and then like it. That's not really how it worked. So I never really ended up reading the Bible. I felt awful about it, felt like I wasn't qualified. But I didn't anyway because I had other stressors in my life. And so another activity day story was about, it's another like insignificant experience, but I also think this one's funny. So it was a different activity day session, and we were making slime, just white slime, glue, activator, basic slime. So anyways, it was white to represent the Holy Ghost, and basically this other girl, she said, I really want to dye it like purple or something. And then the lady was like, no, you can't, because then it won't be pure anymore. And I was like, girl, it's just slime. Like, why? And the last specific thing I wanted to talk about as my experience was how they always teach the children to say, I know this church is true, when you go up to give a talk. When, during the main session where everybody's there, you can, sometimes there's an opportunity where anyone can go up and give their own talk, but the kids would always go up there, the ones who were willing to, and they would always start their faith testimony by saying, I know this church is true. And I think that's just kind of weird and a cultish thing to say, like, I know this church is true, and it's just kind of weird. I that's kind of brainwashy in my opinion. Now for the third part of the video, I'm going to talk about 5 reasons why I left. There are probably more, but they're super specific and I didn't really want to get into those, and this video is probably already gonna be too long. So the first reason is that I completely support the LGBTQ community, but the church does not. And LGBTQ suicides are particularly high in Utah, and that's like the Mormon capital of the USA, and that is really awful. And they do not accept them, so these people often feel left out, feel as though they have done something wrong, which is obviously not at all. Also, the next reason is the church is the LDS or Mormon church is the richest church in the world, and they have $150 billion. Like, yes, they do donate to some organizations, but even if they donated $100 million, that would be a drop in the bucket of $150 billion. That is crazy. And also, why the heck do they have stocks in GameStop and they own a mall in Utah? And there's so much more. They have stocks in a lot of different places. And I'm pretty sure that they own a shell company too. Why does a church need to own these things? Why does the church need this money? They say that it's for the second coming, but what they have taught us about the second coming is that basically money doesn't matter anymore and only nature is left and everything else is destroyed. So why do you need money for that? I don't know. Yes, they do donate to some organizations and that's great, but honestly, I think that tithing is wrong and that you don't need to pay money to get into heaven. That is not, no, that is awful. By the way, tithing is where you pay 10% of all of your earnings of money every week to the church, and they say that you should pay tithing rather than feeding your family. The fourth reason is that the church changes how they believe things. The church contradicts itself all the time, and they change things all the time, trying to be secretive. And I'm not going to go into any details, but they do this. Whoever's watching can research this on their own time, honestly. And then the fifth and last reason is that they didn't allow people of color to hold the priesthood or go to the temple until 1978, and that is not that long ago. So the church, and also now they're saying all the racist things that they have said and recorded are a metaphor for a dark spirit, which doesn't make any sense. They're just trying to cover up the fact that they are racist, but they can't because they are. So those are the 5 reasons why I left, the 5 main ones, I would say. And now I'm going to get to the part where I actually left in January of 2021, which was a little over a year ago. So, my siblings and my mom were thinking about leaving. For, I think, the span of 2 years, they all didn't know that each other was thinking about leaving, but they all were doubting at the same time. So, then one day, my mom needed her phone for something, and I went to grab it, but what the video was on the screen was, how to tell your family that you want to leave the Mormon church, and I was like, that's weird, but I didn't say anything. I kind of thought about it, but I didn't really say anything or think about it too much. And so then, I'm pretty sure in January, my 2 siblings were already out of the church, but then my mom broke the news to me and told me that she was going to be leaving too, which I didn't know. I thought that me and her were the only ones Mormon left in our family, but no. So then I was like, okay, I guess I'll leave too, even though I just want to add in that she completely offered to drive me to church, that she wasn't going to pressure me or force me out in any way. This was completely my own decision. But I was kind of like, you know what, I'll leave too, because there are already things that I don't like about the church. And I began doubting during my first girls camp session, actually, which was during 2020, which was when I joined girls camp, but it was a virtual thing, and there was Zoom meetings all day for like a week, I think. But my sibling and I were on there together, and they were telling me all about why they don't like the church, which is kind of funny because, we were just on Zoom listening to these faith experiences and things like that. But then they were telling me about how they wanted to leave and why they wanted to leave, and I was like, oh yeah, this isn't right. Why would the church say or do these things or believe these things? So I was like, you know what, I'm gonna leave. So I had officially left the church, and ever since then, my family and I like to listen to podcasts debunking the church, and so now we all know all this extra stuff about it and different things that they have debunked. And so, yeah, that is my leaving the Mormon church at 12 and 13 story. Thank you for watching, and I hope that other people can watch this and maybe feel relatable. Maybe I hope this is relatable to anybody my age who has gone through similar or the same thing. And I hope y'all have a great day.